real U.S. Senator, if you're retired, I expect you to be here this weekend. And I said, yes, sir, and I promptly showed up. I'm delighted to be here. And I'm glad to have a chance to talk about Ronald Reagan and what he means for us today and tomorrow. As many of you know, Chris and I both done a movie called Ronald Reagan, Rendezvous with Destiny. And we've done a book that just came out for the Melissa with the Drive 49, which is our 100th anniversary, particular memento built on the movie around the world. In addition, as a side effect or a consequence, I should say, of having done a movie about Reagan, we found ourselves in Gdansk, Poland, interviewing Dr. Levza, who was the electrician who became head of Solidarity, and then was the president of Poland. And we interviewed in Prague Dr. Václav Havel, who was a poet and playwright who spent 3 years in prison fighting the Soviet dictatorship and ended up as the first president of the Free Czechoslovakian Republic. We asked both of them what the decisive moment was in the collapse of the Soviet Empire. We were losing Ronald Reagan, we thought we'd get a great Reagan anecdote. Both of them said to us, oh, it was a year and a half before Reagan was elected. It was June 2nd, 1979, when Pope John Paul II arrived in Poland for a 9-day pilgrimage and aroused the passion, the beliefs, and the nationalism and the religious commitment of the Polish people. And for the following 10 years, they fought the dictatorship until on June 4th, 1989, 10 years and 2 days later, Poland had the first free election in the Soviet Empire. And I tell you that because I want to put in context a moment in history and then apply its lessons to today. And because of the current crisis in Egypt, I want to primarily, in a few minutes, talk about Reagan and the Middle East and the lessons that President Obama would learn if, in fact, he will really seriously look at the lessons of Ronald Reagan. But before I do that, I want to pick up on something else that several people said. I really want to emphasize this because I think it's so important. And I say this in particular to the elected officials here, whether they're in the state legislature, local office, or the Congress. Reagan was an FDR Democrat. He actually learned the rhythm of politics, supporting Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and as late as 1948, he campaigned for Harry Truman, and he did commercials for Hubert Humphrey, but at the time was an anti-communist liberal at a time when there were genuine overt pro-communist liberals. And Reagan learned something which almost no Republican understands. And I'm going to reduce it to 3 big ideas before I talk about the Middle East. But they're ideas that are so central to the future of the United States that I really hope every Republican activist and every Republican elected official will take this talk to heart and will think about it a great deal. The first big thing Reagan knew was that leadership in America has to be optimistic. America is about a better future, a shining city on the hill, a greater life for our children, more freedom, greater prosperity. America is about going west because that's where our future is. America is about building Chicago out of nothing, having it burned down and rebuilding it. Gloom, doom, and despair that all too many conservatives like because it makes them feel somehow secure is exactly the opposite of Ronald Reagan. Reagan was born in Tampico. Chris and I were there yesterday because of his birthplace, in a small apartment above the bank. The entire time he lived with his parents, they always rented. It's interesting. Historians who lack in sensitivity and understanding will describe Ronald Reagan's father as someone with an addiction problem and therefore was continually moving to find a job. Ronald Reagan described it as we moved many times in search of my father's ambition. But I wasn't just willful blindness. That was a passionate, deep belief in American exceptionalism and in the idea that every one of us is endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which the right to pursue happiness. And that Ronald Reagan came to personify, literally with his life, that belief. You'll remember that after he shot, this is part of why Chris and I studied Lady Thatcher, the Pope, and Ronald Reagan. After he shot and the Pope shot, they meet and compare notes on having survived. And they realize that each of them has decided that the rest of their life is dedicated to what God wants them to do. Now, how do you get a secular historian or a secular reporter to have a clue what that conversation is like? And therefore, how could you possibly understand who Reagan was, or who the Pope was, or who Lady Thatcher was? She also barely missed being killed with a bomb attack that killed 200 members of the cabinet. And yet, Reagan, having been shot, we were told by John Barlow, who was his personal Secret Service agent, when they arrived at the hospital, buttoned his coat before he got out of the car. He walked into the hospital, which is an act of enormous will. And his last comment before the anesthesia was, "I hope you're Republican doctors." The doctor said, "Today we're all Republicans." I tear up because think of the level of courage he had every day of his career. Ronald Reagan understood with Kaluman. I've created an American solution, but I think it's the most important single slogan of the next 20 years to come. 2 + 2 = 4. It's bold, it's out of the edge. No Republican can solve it designed it. It's too simple, too positive. But it's based on actually some of the books that I found when we were doing the movement and vote. Solidarity produced big window posters for businesses. We have an original copy in our office, which says, "For Poland to remain Poland, 2 + 2 must always equal 4." And the meaning of that is that there are certain things that are just true. Ronald Reagan, in 1947, met a genuine Stalinist at a Screen Actors Guild meeting. And in a conversation after the meeting, realized the guy actually believed that a dictatorship for America and prison or death for Reagan was a reasonable future. And he assumed it wasn't a psychotic problem, or as the current president would have it, wasn't a problem with communication. He was dealing with evil. And for 33 years, he crisscrossed this country, defending freedom and opposing communism, and then he became president. He became president partly because he optimistically deeply believed that freedom would prevail. It's his speech at Notre Dame, where he basically says, we're simply going to leave communism behind. It's an absurdity. How can you take it seriously? It's his strategy. Remember, the Reagan was asked in 1980, what's your vision of the Cold War? He says 4 words that change history. We win, they lose. The first is, no liberal should use that phrase. First of all, the word we is so narrow. So inherently, it's inherently divisive. If you say we they, then how can it be us? Second, win and lose are such wrangling terms. I realize with the Super Bowl coming up, with basketball season, many of you might be into winning and losing, but that's just a sign that you're reactionaries. The ideal model, I'm not surprised that President Obama suggested that the Super Bowl trophy should be shared equally by all the teams. On the grounds that the word weakest teams have usually equally equal. A team must feel to be the weakest team in the NFL. Don't they shouldn't have the trophy for like 1 week or something just to compensate for their incompetence? Reagan didn't do that, because that's wrong. About 2 + 2 = 4. Winning was better, losing was worse. Having done both in my career, winning is better, losing is worse. Now, the second thing about optimism that Reagan stood for, that was central to who he was, and that also many Republicans don't get. And you see this in the speech he makes in 1976, when Gerald Ford calls him up after losing the nomination, invites him to speak, and he begins by saying, "My fellow Republicans here in this hall, and those Democrats and independents who share our values across America." Remember, Reagan Democrats were the marginal victory in 1980, and by 1988, half of them had become Republicans. That's how decisively he changed American history. Well, we better have the same attitude. There are 204 languages spoken in the Chicago public schools. You had better figure out how to get a website and how to recruit teenage volunteers so you have 204 languages appealing to you. I'm for English as the official language of government. And I am for campaigning in the language that every voter finds optimizes their ability to understand the campaign, because I want to be inclusive. Abraham Lincoln won because German Americans believed that he did not want to kick them out, and they believed that he represented the future, and a great number of them died during the Civil War defending the Union because they knew it was better than German monarchy, and they knew it from first-hand experience. Back, I think, on March 11th, show our John Paul's second film at a Polish-American gathering, and I can tell you that it's come out in Polish, and I can tell you, Polish-Americans who lived through the dictatorship, they understand American exceptionalism. They understand the rule of law. They understand the centrality of the government. So Ronald Reagan's inclusiveness was a key part of who he was. He loved all Americans. He wanted all Americans to have a chance to join. But let me just say to all of you, this is a challenge tonight, and I'm saying on the record, and you guys can think about it for the next few months. When you have the level of teenage unemployment among African Americans that we have today, there is no excuse for the Republican Party not reaching out to every community, including African Americans, and there is no excuse for assuming that Illinois is anything except a battleground state, because we're going to talk about the issues, not the personalities. We're going to talk about a better future, and it's pretty easy at 9% unemployment for the longest period since the Great Depression to say, you know, there's got to be a better way to do this than the current. The third thing Reagan understood, something that Cliff actually says a movie we did called America at Risk, The War with No Name, which is about the whole incapacity of our elites to deal with these trying to kill us, and the fact that they literally can't even talk about it. Reagan understood that you had to have the courage to tell the truth, and you had to have the courage to act. And I was talking with Ambassador John Bolton, who knows this firsthand. One of our close friends is Tony Goldwyn. There's a time constraint, I won't go into the whole story. But Tony was one of Reagan's chief speechwriter for 8 years. He tells a great story about Reagan writing the Evil Empire speech, and having to literally disguise it so the National Security Council thought it was a political speech, didn't pay attention to it. And the first third of the speech was so boring that the junior NSC person they assigned to didn't read beyond it. And they approved it, and he went to Florida. This was a speech for a group of evangelical ministers, because they were reasonably confident that the leaders of the National Security Council would have zero interest in speech to evangelical ministers. When they got to Florida, they tore off the first third of the speech. And they started with the good part. And it was a design by Reagan to avoid the fight. And we have in our movement Reagan at the time, Sharansky, who at that time was in the Soviet Gulag, who says, the day the president said evil empire, the morale of the guards went down and the morale of the prisoners went up. It was finally a Western political leader that had the courage to tell the truth. Now, talk briefly about the lessons of Ronald Reagan in the Middle East. Let me start by saying, because all of our left-wing friends will nag us and say, well, he helped arm the Afghans. He did this or he did that. But Ronald Reagan had three great goals. Rebuild American exceptionalism, American civic culture, which after Jimmy Carter he did pretty bad. Yeah. Relaunch the American economy by cutting taxes, cutting regulations, and focusing trade on entrepreneurs, small business owners, and people who can trade survive money and work. And third, defeat the Soviet Empire. Well, these were fairly big goals. And so Ronald Reagan measured all foreign policy against a single goal: defeat the Soviet Empire. And he didn't invest heavily in Lebanon. He didn't invest heavily in Iran or Iraq. He invested in defeating the Soviet Empire. 11 years after he was elected president, the Soviet Empire disappeared. By any standard, one of the greatest nonviolent historic changes in the history of the human race. And Reagan would now say to us, okay, I did my generation's job. Now it's your turn. And I think there are a couple of very simple rules for thinking about the Middle East. And I don't want to spend the time picking on the Obama administration, although I must say, the spectacle of them having appointed a new special envoy this week and having publicly disagreed with him today, undermining totally his authority and credibility, represents the worst of Carter without professionalism. It's very dangerous for America's future. And let me be quite clear. Going into the 10th anniversary of 9/11, we are not winning. We haven't lost decisively, and we don't have to believe we will lose. But we better have the courage to look reality in the face. When the security guard of a Pakistani governor shoots him because he's too moderate, the first thing you have to know is, why do you believe we understand the rest of the Pakistani intelligence and security forces better than we understood the guard who just killed the governor? When you learn that 700,000 Iraqi Christians have fled since 2003, leaving only 500,000 behind, why would you call that a victory? What's it a victory for? When you learn that the army we're being told we're going to depend on in Egypt was in fact produced the people who killed Saddam in 1981, what makes you so confident that we understand fully who's penetrating the army of the U.S.? This is a larger, longer, more difficult struggle than anyone in our elites is prepared to talk about. But Reagan would have said it starts, as close to put it, with telling the truth and acting the truth. The Attorney General said the other day that we've had 126 indictments in the last 2 years for people who are plotting terrorism. He refuses to identify what unifies them. A woman in Pennsylvania, where I was born and where I was a U.S. Senator, pled guilty last week. Her nickname is Jihad Jane. Now, it would be politically incorrect to suggest to you how she got that term, or it would be politically incorrect to suggest to you that she was a convert to something. But this is nonsense. The fact is, we want to reach out to every moderate and every modernizing Muslim on the planet. We want to help them, empower them, strengthen them. And we want to defeat every radical Islamist on the planet who would destroy our civilization. And my advice to all of you is to always start by saying, we want to reach out and work with and help every moderate and moderate Islamist member of Islam who wants to work with us, so that nobody can smear you and dishonor you by suggesting that telling the truth about the people who are trying to kill us is a sign we're against all of Islam. I'm only against the people who want to kill us. But I'm perfectly prepared to say, Ronald Reagan's tradition, I want to identify them. I want to defeat them. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to learn about them. I don't want to mention them. I don't want to about what's going on in Egypt. Of course we should be on the side of the Egyptian people. Of course we should be prepared to help them move towards democracy. But we should not allow the process of transition to degenerate as it did the new Muslim Brotherhood dictatorship. And I want to say something that many of the elites will find totally unacceptable. And those of you in Congress can go back and get the Congressional Research Service and start briefing you, and you can think about the hearings that's under required. In 1947, the United States covertly interfered in France and in Italy, and we defeated the communist effort to take over those two countries. If we had played by the games of modern liberalism, France and Italy would have gone communist, we would ultimately have lost Western Europe, and we would today live in a world dominated by the Soviets. To be told that we can't discriminate, we can't select, we can't describe, we can't help, that we're so bureaucratic, so cumbersome, and so legalistic, that we are an ineffectual nation in a war in which there are people trying to get nuclear and biological weapons to kill us by the millions, to eliminate our cities and to destroy our civilization, and to say we're going to enter this war as though it is a criminal justice process among elegant people living in nice places and chatting pleasantly over lunch is suicide. I reject suicide as people. Ronald Reagan said at the end of his speech when Gerald Ford invited him to come talk. He said that something which is not true of us, but maybe some extent to be true here, but not true of us across the nation. He said we may be fewer than ever, but we have to be unified, and we have to go forward, and we have to tell the truth to every American, and we have to find a way to reach out and communicate to them. As a famous general once said, that there is no substitute for victory. I want to suggest to you, nothing would more clearly define the end of the Roosevelt coalition and the beginning of a new era of competent center-right government than for us to take this state in November of 2012. And I came tonight to challenge your chairman, your elected officials, and your party leaders to sit down and think through at a serious level how many groups we have to reach, how many people we have to talk to, how much bigger does our coalition have to be. Let's go out and tell the truth about the disaster this administration is creating, and let's believe with great faith that the people of Illinois love America and Illinois more than they like patronage, intimidation, and somebody who is a favorite son, sort of vaguely, but without any Illinois principles in what he's doing in Washington. Thank you. Good luck.